Thank you very much for staying with politics tonight. Tonight we're discussing how to address the inevitable pains of subsidy removal. And I've been speaking with former lawmaker representing Kaduna Central Senatorial District in the 8th Senate, Senator Sani. All right, distinguished. Now, the effect of subsidy removal has been compounded by sliding value of the naira. Do you agree that the flotation of the naira should have been delayed?
Well, when a new government comes into office and it has policies, programs, as stated in its own manifestos, there is no better time to start implementing that program than in the first few months of its taking over office. The achievement we have recorded in the energy sector is the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill that was passed, which made the NNPC now a limited liability company that was set out to make profits. And I'm so convinced and glad that the management of NNPC under the managing director, Melekeri, have made a lot of reforms, which led to the discovery of oil in northern part of Nigeria, and also their efforts to address the issue of oil theft in Niger Delta, and so many things, the gas pipeline and so many things. But on this issue of subsidy, I think it has been so difficult for any government to implement until this time around. So I'm happy that this has taken place. What we fear has happened. Now, how do we get out of it and make progress from this point? I think that is what is most important. For the government, the most important achievement now will be to say we have been able to remove subsidy, and we have also been able to limit the hardship and suffering experienced by people, and we have been able to recover money that has been wasted on subsidy for generations, and this is the money that is recovered and how it is being used. So that will be a clear indication that we have made sacrifices and we have gained from that sacrifices which we have made. If not that, well, I don't see anything that can happen. If government don't take seriously the issue of addressing poverty and making sure that the palliative address suffering and hardship faced by people are going to revolt. This no protest you have seen. There will be the largest protest which this government has never seen. People will come out on the street in mass protest that will shake the foundation of this country once the poverty has reached a level where people cannot tolerate it. But the government can curtail that, and that is making sure that this money that is reserved for subsidy, for palliatives, goes directly to people that are affected and people that should benefit from it. I think that is the way out of where we are now.
All right, so talking about how the government should limit this hardship, what do you think needs to be done by governments to alleviate the suffering of the masses following aftershocks of this removal?
Well, first of all, government should set up a structure at the federal, state, and local government levels. Let people identify who is specifically in charge of the palliatives in the federal level, at the state level, and at the local government level. And when you have such a structure, every kobo that goes that should go to the people will go through that structure, and then it goes to the masses directly. Now, how can that be done? Well, I've seen what they have done in the National Council of States and also the government, the plan which they have. When we should divide this into two, the short term and the long term. The short term is to increase the wages of the minimum wage to an acceptable and affordable limit. You don't just make statements that we have increased minimum wage when there is no money to pay that wages, like it was done under Buhari administration. Many states, on paper, they have 30,000 naira minimum wage, but they can't even pay 18,000. So that has to be addressed. Secondly, there should be public transportation Government should buy buses and taxis and hand it over to unions and state very clearly that these are the prices, these are the fees people need to pay transport fare. I've seen the governor of Bayelsa State and that of Borno State sharing vehicles, and that is a very good start, and as far as I'm concerned. And then thirdly, there should be support for agriculture because food is a major issue now. And support for farmers to be able to produce food and making sure also there is enough security to protect our farmers, particularly in the northwest and northeastern part of Nigeria, where now they pay bandits to allow them to go to farms to harvest or plant their crops. I think that has to be clearly addressed. The next thing that has to be done is the issue of conditional cash transfer. Well, the register, there should be a register of the vulnerable in our society and how they can all benefit directly by crediting their account. And as for the train services, there is need to lower the train ticket so that people can be able to access the services of Nigerian Railways. And these are the short time that need to be done. The long time has to do with investment in all sectors. If we said we are saving 1.5 trillion every month from subsidy, let people clearly see where this money is going to. If you are constructing 10,000 houses for every state, let people see it. If you are investing in health, in education, in roads, let people see it clearly. If you end up handing over monies for palliative to state governors, the first beneficiary will be those who supported them to be in office, and that is their political party. So if you do that, you will still be creating more problems for yourself. If this removal of subsidy and the consequences of it turns out negative, it is the president that is going to be blamed. And if it comes out positive, I mean, everyone will share the glory. So it is for the president to know that the buck stops on his table. He must ensure that there is a structure so that funds that are allocated to palliatives don't go to settling backlog of pensions and salaries, which the new governors have inherited. Many states are indebted, like in Kaduna State now. We are the second most indebted state in the country, and the funds to continue the activities of governance is something that is very challenging. So if money is given to other states with such kind of trouble, the first thing will be the priorities which the states are facing and may not be palliative. So a structure is very important to address the problems we are going to face today. And if this distribution of palliatives fails, then there will be protests in the country. And I think that is not something which a government is going to have. Look at what's happening in Kenya. The new government of William Ruto has implemented tax reforms and other forms, but people are already in the street because there wasn't a serious measures to tackle the implications of these reforms that are supposed to be. So we should learn from what is happening in Kenya to avert the similar situation happening in this country. But the removal of subsidy is a courageous act. But next thing is that it can only be marked as a success if those that are suffering, those that are in hardship today, are being attended to by the funds that will be allocated to them. And the National Assembly has a duty to make sure that this goes down to the masses.
The president has dropped the idea of distribution of 8,000 naira to 12 million Nigerians. How will you react to this?
You see, he came from the trenches. And if there is anyone who has organized and funded protests in Nigeria in the last 35 years, is the president of this country. He was a protester. He led protests. And he is a major dissenter in history of this country, and he knows the implication of people who are still in the battlefield. Many of those whom he has fought with for democracy are still in the trenches and have not retired and are not in the position of power and are not shy of coming out to the street to lead another protest. So the decision by the government to withdraw the idea of 10,000 naira is positive. It shows that they are listening and they are sensitive and they are also mindful of the implication of that 8,000, because I call that 8,000 an attempt to Almajiranize in court the country, turn everyone into a beggar. But the idea of the act of the government, the response of withdrawing this 8,000 shows the government is listening. And I think they shouldn't take too much long in coming out with an acceptable. Government cannot give everyone 1 million naira because we don't have money for that. But at least there should be an acceptable amount that should go to Nigeria. And I think the dialogue going on between the government and the labor is very important. And oil is an important lifeline for Nigeria. And for a nation of 220 million people, at this time, we need a new vision. We need a leadership that will be able to withstand the consequences of what may happen today for the progress and future of Nigerians and the future Nigerians. So I believe that this sacrifice should bear fruit, and the only way to do that is to succeed and not reverse back to the subsidy regime, because there is virtually not money to share to people who are calling themselves oil marketers again.
All right, Senator. So back to one of the points you raised earlier, and that's conditional cash transfer. I mean, this has worked in other countries, but why is it problematic here in Nigeria?
Well, it is problematic here in Nigeria because our corruption is deeply entrenched. I can give you an example. There was, in the last dispensation, there was an attempt to send money to people, persons with disability. And then there was an initiative to compile a list of people who are living with disabilities. And for that, many people, in an attempt to get access to that money, claim to be disabled by the fact that they will say they are dumb or they are deaf. So most times you see people who are benefiting from such conditional cash transfer were simply collaborators of the people who are sending out the alerts to the people. So it was tainted with corruption. Conditional cash transfer can only happen if we have a database of the vulnerable in our society. And it's possible to have it if there is a serious collaboration between the state, federal government, local governments, the civil society, and the unions, trade unions. We can reach out, women groups, they can reach out and get the real number of people who deserve such kind of handout. So making sure that we have a credible database for the vulnerable in our society is the first step before you start sharing money to people who don't deserve it. I think that is very important. And we don't have too much time to do it. People now are suffering. People can't pay their rent. People can't pay the tuition fees of their children. It's been very difficult for people to move from one point to another. So there is no an eternity of time to give government to start thinking of how to solve this problem. I think the earlier they start, the better, and setting up that structure is very important. Who is responsible for this palliative, and how will this palliative be shared, and to whom? This is very important, and the earlier the better, because people are becoming restless. People are not protesting now because they are giving the government the benefit of doubt. But you see, you can't overstretch the patience of people. To a certain point, when they see that nothing is coming, then they will say, okay, well, we need to go and protest. And so for the period of time which the people have given the government is for them to use that time to make sure that this issue is being addressed. That is the issue of poverty, the issue of consequences of withdrawal of subsidy is being addressed. But subsidy is now history. What is ahead of us is how do we tackle the implication of that withdrawal.
All right, but Senator, overall, how you describe the way President Tinubu has handled the matter so far?
Well, first of all, the way he has handled it is, well, I will have to appreciate his courage in removing the subsidy because the last government were not able to do it. Though I've had some spokesperson of the last government said if they have withdrawn, that Tinubu could not have won election. But they have 8 years to withdraw it, which they couldn't. Why couldn't he have withdrawn it in the first tenure of his government when nobody was even contesting with him in 2019? So simply that was an excuse. So the boldness in removing the subsidy is something you can commend the government on. But secondly, the tragedy was that the plan were haphazard. There was no coordination, there's no congency, there is no articulation in terms of the handling the consequences of the subsidy. But also for the fact that government has withdrawn the 8,000, we hope that they will come with a better idea. But the most commendable thing is the dialogue process that has been going on between the government and Labour. I think never at a time in the history of Nigeria has the Labour felt at home with the president and removing a subsidy without an oshimole or type of protest on the street. So I think this is the government that has been able to achieve that, but does not mean that the patience of the people is endless. If you come to the next 2, 3, 4 months and there is nothing on the ground, you will have protests in the country. And the earlier that is averted, the better. But now, the strategy, the steps taken by the government is in order. But it shouldn't be taking too long before people should be reached out.
So now with the new pump price of petrol at 617 naira per litre, which has led to increase in cost of goods and services, what other measures do you think the federal government should institute to support vulnerable Nigerians?
Well, the good thing about it is that before the 2023 election, all the 3 major presidential candidates, Asuwaju, Atiku, and Peter Obi, have made it very clear that they are going to withdraw subsidy. I think the only presidential candidate that refused to make that pledge is my friend and brother, Yoweri Sowore. He maintained that subsidy will go on. But the major candidates have made it very clear that they will withdraw subsidy. But now, people don't understand what withdrawal of subsidy was at that very time, perhaps. But withdrawal of subsidy will come with a price. Because when government is no more funding subsidy, it means that market forces will control the prices of the commodity, which now is the PMS. And this petroleum, for the fact that we don't have functional refineries for 8 years, the government of President Buhari was unable to build refineries, and for the fact that we have to import it, and you cannot import petroleum products with naira, you have to import it with foreign currency. And for the fact that the central bank has now said naira should float against the dollar, it means that government will also not be subsidizing the naira. And if naira is not being subsidized, certainly it will be left to fight and find its own way, its own level. And as long as the value of naira keeps going down and dollar will be going up, and then at the end of the day, it is the dollar that will be used to purchase petroleum products that will be shared to the country. So for now, it's possible. If naira goes up, if the value naira rises, there is a possibility that the prices of petroleum product will go down. If naira plunges down, the prices will go up. Well, this simply, I'm not an economist, but this is simply what market forces is all about. We are in a phase in our history where reform programs are introduced, which will be very painful to everyone. But we hope at the end it's going to produce a result. These reforms we are particularly experiencing, this is not the first time. Babangida regime tried to implement this kind of reforms, devaluing the value of Naira, retrenching workers, removing subsidy, which are all conditionalities of World Bank and IMF. But for now, we hope that this time around it will succeed. Until the Naira stabilizes, the prices of petroleum or petrol or PMS will continue to fluctuate as it is now. Because in those times, Naira, when it was selling at 400 or 500, is the CBN that was subsidizing it. I can remember at a certain time, the former CBN governor, he said they are defending the dollar, Naira, with about 3 to 4 to 500 million dollar every month, or was it quarterly, to show up. So Naira was not operating on its real value under the last administration. Now it is left to fight for its own life. And
so, Senator, let me quickly get you to react to this. Hiking fuel prices, volatile and dependent on the international market. But what can Nigeria do to get out of this trap in a few minutes?
Well, we can get out of this trap. First of all, the need to have an experienced and visionary economic team, and that will set a clear agenda for this administration, which will include addressing the pains of reform and seeing also the way forward. And I've seen that there is an intervention in addressing our tax regime, and petroleum is removed, price removed. So now the priorities of the government should be tackled: education, agriculture, science and technology, health, industry. We must ensure that we export more to get more dollars to this country. That is
Thank you very much,
the way out.
Thank you very much, Senator. We're out of time. Thank you so much. I've been speaking with a former lawmaker representing Kaduna Central Senatorial District in the 8th Senate, Senator Sani, tonight to discuss the inevitable pains of subsidy removal and how the government must address this. Thank you very much for coming on Politics Tonight. It is an honor having you on the program. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But the conversation continues from here. Get in touch with us on Twitter at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke OO using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. Join us for the repeat episode at midnight and on Monday for another edition of Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a great weekend.